Hi, this is Nitzan Bergman. I'm the director of Aseret Global, and welcome back to Aseret Nation. And once again, we have Rabbi Shalom Schwartz, the founder of the Aseret movement, all the way from Yerushalayim. Shalom, Rav Shalom.
Shalom Rav Nitzan.
How are you?
Hodul Hashem. Thank God. Everything's good. How are
Okay.
you?
Good. Thank God. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. I know that Tisha B'Av is starting pretty soon over there, so let's get straight in. Shalom, today we want to talk about the fifth commandment. The fifth commandment is kivud av v'em, to honor one's parents, to honor one's father and one's mother. What's interesting about it is that it has an ending. It doesn't just, we're all used to the tablets with just a few words on them, but they're much longer, some of them. And this one says, Kaved es avicha v'esemecha, laman yerichon yemecha, al ha'adama asher Hashem Elokecha noten lach. Honor your parents in order, in order that your days will be lengthened on the land that God is giving you. And the question I have is, what's the connection and why this one, right? The Ten Commandments, and this is the only one that mentions this length on the land. It's nice to know that Eretz Israel, when people say, "Where's Israel in the Ten Commandments?" It's here. But what's the connection? What do you think about this? Have you thought about this?
It's interesting how long it took me and others to notice that. We were teaching the Ten Commandments for a long time when this became a subject amongst our team. Like, where do we want to teach the centrality? It's just, so I had an answer about it. Really, it's sort of like because everything is connected to the land. So, okay, so it's not one of the Ten Commandments. Go live in Israel. It's what we call mitzvah shebeklalut. It's a general mitzvah that underpins the entire Torah and the entire Ten Commandments. So it doesn't have to have a specific reference or commandment as a unique commandment, live in Israel, which is a commandment that appears later in the Torah.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's like I think about it as a picture that has a frame. Every picture has a frame. So the frame for these Ten Commandments is Eretz Israel. Why is it not written there? Yeah, you're not seeing it. You're not looking at the frame.
so I have 2 points that I want to make here.
Okay.
One is very, very interesting from a structural standpoint of the commandments. So there are commentaries that say because these are the actual final words that appear on the right, what we call the right tablet, right? The commandments that we generally refer to as commandments between man and God. That's already a question. Why is the commandment of honoring your parents on the side of commandments between you and God? My parents, as far as I know, are not gods. They're people. So you could make the argument they should appear along with the man to man
Hmm.
side of the tablet. However, since we see them as kind of a concluding statement on all the first 5 commandments, so it some want to say that it's not only is it kind of a wrap up, it relates this Leman Yarifin Yimechad, these 5 things that I'm telling you, including honoring your parents, will bring about this lengthening of your days in the land that I'm giving you. In the
Uh-huh.
version that we have in the version we have in Parshat V'Chanan, which we're about to read this Shabbat, it adds another word, by the way. It adds Leman Yitavlach, in order that it'll be good for you,
Hmm.
lengthening your days and good for you in the land that I am promised that I'm giving to you. It's in the present tense, by the way. It's an interesting point. Hashem noten lecha. He's constantly giving us this land. Thank God, because if it was only in the past, maybe we wouldn't be able to feel that constant gift of the land of Israel. But the wrap up is meaning, and it's also, of course, the transition to the next 5 commandments. So one could look at it as these man to God commandments and these man to man commandments are basically connected through this fifth commandment to honor your parents. And why is that so? What
Hmm.
does
Hmm.
honoring your parents have to do connecting man to God and man to man? So the most basic important, it's almost like a hinge. In other words, the extent to which I see these two dimensions of the covenant related comes through by relationship to family and parents. The vehicle to transmit the covenant is family, is honoring your parents. So if God gave us a commandment, he starts off, know that I'm God that took you out of Egypt, don't have any other gods. You carry my name, which means we have a mitzvah of being sanctifying God's name, Shabbat, which is the pillar of our relationship to time and freedom, and the covenant on a weekly basis. All of these things now become contained in, or let's put it this way, they're the foundational messages of the covenant that now need to be put into the man-to-man, the society dimension of this covenant. And how do you do that? Through family, through a relationship to your parents. Parents pass on the covenantal mission and the values of the covenant family to family, parents to children.
Generation.
The basis of doing that is honoring your parents. We could talk about that in a minute. I want to stress one other point before we go on to that, which is that this is we're talking about something that is intuitively very, very deep. And as we know that our relationship with our parents affects so much in our life. Freud wanted to say that our relationship to God is a projection of our relationship with our parents, right? We call God our Father in heaven. Torah teaches us the opposite. God created parents so we have a vehicle to understand God, just as we have unconditional love of parents to children. And we want to honor our parents in that context of a family. We want to give back to them. We want to feel hakarat tov. We want to appreciate the life that we've been given to our parents. That is the vehicle for understanding our relationship with God and feeling our relationship. Just this understanding, it's a very experiential dimension. God forbid a person has parents that are abusive. To be able to connect with God in a meaningful way is very difficult. I've met people like that. They've had troubled childhoods, and they can't find the means to feel what it would mean to have a relationship with a unconditional loving God.
Wow. Wow. You're saying that, and I'm like, I know a lot of people. Wow, that's a great insight. If people have no experience with someone, above them, taking care of them and loving them unconditionally and guiding them for their good. Yeah, I mean Avinu Shebashamayim. That's what God is doing. How do you relate to that? Wow. Okay, thank you.
So just to finish this thought for a second before we go deeper, I think we're talking about Avram Avinu, for example, is given who we call Avraham Avinu, right. Abraham our father, which is a place to look for the meaning of parents' relationships. All of our forefathers and our foremothers, we call them Avram Avinu, Ima, Sarah Imenu. Right? Yeah. We're talking about the founding fathers and mothers of the Jewish people are related to this commandment, right? We have to honor. That's why we call them our fathers and our mothers. We don't just say, oh, there's these founding people, Abraham, Schwartz, and Sarah. We call them literally our fathers, Abraham Avinu. We refer to them all the time as our fathers and our mothers, and we honor them by that, right? So honoring your parents goes right back to honoring Abraham and Sarah and Yitzhak and Rivka. They are the fathers and mothers, founding fathers and mothers that deserve honor. Honor meaning here, recognize who they are, recognize what they give to us, what they gave to us. And I just want to read the opening passage together of Abraham's Parshat Lech Lecha, the chapter 12 of Genesis, just to give it a little context. God says to Avram, go to yourself, go for yourself, go to yourself, me'artzecha, from your land. Here's again the land dimension. Umi moladetcha, from your birthplace. Umi beit avicha, and from the home of your father. He's leaving his land. He's leaving his birthplace. He's leaving his family. What happened to honoring your father? We'll put that on the side for the moment. But he's disconnecting from the idol worship society that he grew up in. For what? El haaretz asher arecha. God said, you're going to leave all these places and you're going to go to the land that I will show you. So right away, we see this connection between forefathers, and land, right in the opening passage where we meet Avram Avinu, the founding Jew, the first Jew, in the sense of being the first Ivri. We call him, the Torah calls him an Ivri, the one who stood up against the society. So just to see how integrally these two dimensions, honoring parents and land, are, we'll continue with a few more sentences.
I just want to share with you that I've never thought of it this way, but if I'm listening to you, if I'm hearing what you're saying, it's, it obviously has its issues with Terach, the father of Abraham, but really God's saying to him, I'm going to be your father, and you're going to come into my house. That's the land of Israel. So move from your current father's house and move in with me, because I'm going to be your father.
Okay, that's a beautiful parish, a beautiful explanation of this. And I think, especially sitting before Tisha B'Av, where we're mourning the loss of God's house as it relates to our fulfillment of our covenant and the destruction of the temple and the rejection of the Jewish people in the desert on this day, on Tisha B'Av, of not going into the land at God's invitation to come into his house. And that Tisha B'Av commemorates both those events, the rejection of Israel in the desert, when they heard the report of the spies and they felt insecure and they couldn't have trust in God enough to move forward. And of course, the destruction itself of the temple and the forfeiting of the land, both at the destruction of the first temple and the Babylonian exile, and later on the Roman exile, which were kind of, we went on for 2,000 years. So
it also answers up why today, even though we have Israel, I think half or more than half of all the Jews in the world are living there, it's still Tisha B'Av, because, it's almost like coming back to the house and like, Dad, are you there? And and you don't hear him yet. You can't find him. Okay. So that's not the house. That's, of course, the house is the house with God.
We're still rebuilding the house and hopefully inviting God into his own house in a way that allows our experience of him to be one of full engagement and full living with our mission, which we understand to be the basis of building the temple again. Sorry.
Okay, please continue.
No, there's so much to talk about here, but I thought the next few sentences also bring this home very profoundly. It continues with the words, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I'll make your name great. The world's going to know about the Jewish people. And become a blessing. And it continues, I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. And through you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Choice of word here, very significant. Families of the earth will be blessed. There's a choice of this Abraham and Sarah building this new family in the land. They are to then take their family message, their family commitment, and to create or commit to a covenantal destiny whose fulfillment is to bring blessing to the families of the earth, the brotherhood of man. We will be, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to be a source. We still are. We have been, and we will continue to be, because we're in this covenant, seeing the world as an extended family. Family has a very unique dimension to it, in the sense that on the one hand, it's very internally focused, right? You're part of my family. You belong to this family. You sit with your family members, your brothers, your sisters, your grandchildren, whatever you have in your family. It's your family, and you feel responsible for it. You feel love towards it. You feel commitment and loyalty,
belonging,
and everything, and belonging. At the same time, there's such a thing as extension of your family. That's why Judaism invites converts, serious converts, into the family. We believe a convert deserves to be treated as full family, and even special love for them, because the family dimension needs to extend beyond the nuclear family, beyond the actual Jewish family. And to the extent to which this universal purpose, the covenantal mission that we're on, is to bring light to the whole world, bring blessing to all the families of the earth, because it's not a matter of, okay, we're going to get all this blessing from God. Those people that hate us, they're going to get bad news from God. He's going to curse them. It's not about that. It's the final. They're going to choose sides because we do bring this message of God's purpose into the world, and the morality that we got through the Ten Commandments and the Torah is our covenantal commitment, and it affects how we're viewed by the world, and the world has to take a choice, make a choice how to relate to us. But the vision that we have is this particular people starting from a family, carrying those family values into the creation of a people that needs to bring that vision for all of humanity. So it's a very, very critical element in understanding the role of honoring your parents, because honoring your parents, as it began here, means that you create families. It's the pivotal dimension. You can't build a family that's going to continue to pass on the covenant one generation to the next without having a vehicle for that, which is children respect their parents. They know where they came from. Yeah, we're the people. I got my covenant and my values from my parents, from their parents, all the way back to Avram Avinu, back to the Ten Commandments, and I'm passing them on to you, my child, and to my grandchildren. Well, why should I listen to you? No, I'm actually a messenger to show you the value of this. You're not listening to me per se. And by the way, it's a critical factor. We're not about authority. Listen to me because I'm your dad. It's listen to me when I'm right because I'm your dad. And don't listen to me when I'm wrong. We don't teach our children to be obedient without questioning. We teach them to be serious about seeking truth.
Right.
And that the halacha is very specific about that. If your parents tell you to do the wrong thing, to break the Torah, obviously you're not supposed to, because God is giving the commandment to listen to your parents, and God is the one with the authority to tell us all how to fulfill our lives and fulfill this covenant. So it's not about authority per se. It's about having a vehicle, a vessel even, to allow this Masorah, what we call the Masorah, the passing on of the covenant, to have a vehicle to successfully do it. And when you see,
I'm picturing, like it's interesting that I would say like the family event of passing on the covenant is actually Pesach night, Leil Seder, right? And it's interesting. It's a big question I have. The focus is coming out of Egypt. There's very little focus on Sinai. We mention it in Dayenu and all the steps, and but it's not like, hey kids, it starts with Egypt more than it focuses on Egypt more than Sinai. But when does it really begin? Like, what's the opening ritual of this event? The four questions, where the kids, the kids initiate it. So it's a beautiful insight that as a child, you're part of your responsibility, and maybe that can start very young because it's something we kind of get, but part of our responsibility is I'm going to carry on this tradition. I'm going to carry on the covenant. And the way to do that properly is to really understand it. So how do you understand something? You start asking questions. Why this? Why that? No. Nice.
I mean, I think your point is well taken. It deserves its own analysis, the relationship between Pesach as the vehicle for passing on the covenant and Sinai. There is, this element of Brit Avot and Brit Sinai, Brit Torah, Brit Avot and Brit Torah. The covenant of the forefathers, whether or not you accept the Torah or not, you're a part of the Jewish people. So it is in that sense two-staged. We left Egypt, we got our physical freedom. The emphasis there is on freedom being given to us by God. It's referenced again at the first of the Ten Commandments that God introduces himself to the Jewish people in this Ma'amad Har Sinai, in this revelation about Sinai. How does he introduce himself? Not as I'm the God who created the earth, which would be, or the universe, that would be a pretty nice way to, your business card, nice way to introduce yourself. But we say, on the contrary, God says, I'm the God that took you out of Egypt. I'm the God that redeemed you from slavery. Why does God use that as his business card, as his opening line of the Ten Commandments? What do you say? Why is that so important as the basis of his introduction to us?
Yeah, I got to think. You tell me.
Okay.
Tell our viewers.
I love you. I really love you. I love you so much. I gave you your freedom. I saw you were in pain. I took you out of this house of slavery. It's a statement of tremendous love when a parent sits down
Mhm.
with his children to tell them what to do and to first make sure they know you love them. First, make sure that they know that you committed to them. We not that we created the world. We brought you up.
Mm.
I've been there for you your whole life. I'm with you. I'm going to continue to be with you through all your difficulties. Now let's talk about the covenant. Don't do this, do that. You have to have the foundation of love and recognition of that love as the foundation of passing on any message, any covenantal message, and a guide for life. So I'll tell you a story here because a covenant's a very heavy thing. When I had a cousin who was a Holocaust, his parents were Holocaust survivors. He was married to my cousin, and I got a call out of the blue. I didn't even know him really. I knew him as a cousin, but we had never spoken personally before. He's married to my cousin, and he phones me up. He said, we just had a baby boy. The Could you come over and talk to me? I need to speak to somebody. You know, I was a rabbi. So we sit down in his home, and he said, "What am I doing? We lived through the Holocaust. People who had Brit Milah, who had circumcision, were killed by the Nazis. And I'm about to do this to my child? Why would I do that? Why would I actually give this mark on my child's body that's going to allow him to be identified by enemies of the Jewish people to, God forbid, kill him? I don't feel I can go through with this. I hadn't learned in yeshiva. Nobody prepared me for this moment of being a rabbi or a friend or a cousin of this moment. And I looked at him. I said, Mendy, I feel what you're feeling. I really feel that you're in a dilemma. What, why do you want to do it? And I put the question back to him. And at that moment, he said, I'm a Jew. I'm part of this. How can I not do it? I feel this dilemma, but in the end, I'm a Jew. I'm a part of this covenant. And I need to give the covenant to my child as well. That's what my role is. And he couldn't articulate it in the sense of what the meaning of the covenant was, or he wasn't particularly religious, but he understood that he was in this chain that went all the way back to Sinai. And somehow he's being asked now, are you willing to give this to your child? It's your opportunity, your responsibility, your privilege, but it's heavy. You know how heavy it is because you know your parents and all the family, the Holocaust. You don't want to give him that, but you can't avoid giving him what you got. You're a part of this covenant. You're a member of the chain. So, it reminds me also of a time my first Shabbat in Israel, my first Shabbat ever, I was sent to a family of a fellow named Asa Widow, who lived in a religious neighborhood here. He was a very well-known travel agent eventually. I didn't know anything about him. And I was sent by some people. I started studying a couple days in yeshiva. That's another story. But I ended up sitting in his living room, I was spending Shabbat with him and he had like 5 or 6 daughters. Very nice family. And he takes me aside Shabbat afternoon. And he said to me, how long do you have to go back in your family to find a religious observant Jew? And it's interesting because I wouldn't have known the answer to that if I hadn't had a conversation about a year before this with my grandfather, my mother's father. Somehow it came up. He told me about his youth, that he had grown up in a religious home. I didn't know that at all until then. I was 18 at the time, and I just never asked him about it. We didn't grow up religious. I know he was from Poland, but That didn't mean that he had a religious background, but he told me I grew up in a mitzvah observant home, Shabbat, holidays, the whole deal.
Mm.
So I said to this Asa widow, I at least I didn't know my father's side story, but on my mother's side, it was my grandparents. My grandparents were from a religious home. So he said, "Well, did you know that from them?" So he then said to me, "You know, you're breaking a chain." What do you mean I'm breaking a chain? You're breaking the chain that existed from Sinai until your grandparents, who lived a certain lifestyle, passed on a certain commitment to this covenant and a religious lifestyle and a relationship with Torah and God, and now you're breaking that chain. I said, I'm not breaking any chain. I didn't grow up with it. What do you mean I'm breaking a chain? You're not choosing consciously to do it, but you don't know even what you're breaking. But you're breaking a chain that existed for thousands of years until and now you're not living that lifestyle. You have no idea what this covenant is about, and you're breaking the chain. I said, don't accuse me of breaking a chain. I'm not doing that. He said, you may not be choosing to do anything because you're ignorant of what that chain is. Don't you think you should find out what that chain is about before you break it? And I took a moment and I said, it was a very pivotal moment in my life. And I said to him, I need to think about that. I never looked at it that way. And I ended up that afternoon deciding that I was going to come and study more about Judaism. I was going to finish my ulpan and from kibbutz and come back for 2 weeks. I would give 2 weeks of my life to studying what the meaning of this chain is that I was breaking, to break it consciously or not break it. But anyhow, again, it was this moment of feeling
How long did you end up staying?
I'm still staying. This is 50 years later, but I studied for 7 years, but it was a moment of truth for me because he framed it as this chain in this passing on parents to children, the vehicle of transmitting the covenant. And I had never even thought that I was part of some covenantal chain and message because I didn't grow up with that understanding. But he made a lot of sense. Once I understood that there was such a thing as parents to children, not just a lifestyle, not just a religion, but something that had to do with a message being passed on generation to generation with commitment, with sacrifice. Jews were killed. I mean, looking back at that, yeah, there's a huge issue. I remember a similar story when different dimension, but I got a call from a friend of mine's mother. And she was crying onto the phone with me. She said, my son, she was a Holocaust survivor also. And she's crying on the phone, you have to speak to my son, Morris. You have to speak to him. What's the problem? He's going to marry a non-Jewish girl. She's a wonderful girl, but she's not Jewish. And I can't live. I can't live to see this. I said, well, I don't know if I can have an effect on him. I don't know what to say to him. She said, what do you mean? Tell him that he's breaking this line of the Jewish people. We didn't come here to just give up. She wasn't religious. She didn't raise him religious, but she understood that if her child marries a non-Jewish girl, her grandchildren are not going to be Jewish. And she didn't even understand why it was so deeply significant for her because she didn't have a commitment to Judaism or God or Torah in any, traditional way. She deeply understood that there was something beyond even your belief system because you are a vehicle for this covenantal transmission. And my son is breaking the chain.
Wow. So let's try summarize for our listeners. We're saying, it sounds so like countercultural in today's, today so much focus on the individual and, you should make up your mind what you want and find out who you are. And at the same time, there's just this epidemic of loneliness. It's a mistake because really what the Western world's saying is you don't really belong anywhere. You belong to yourself. And that's very lonely. And what I'm hearing today is you have an incredible belonging, but it's a choice, and it's a choice to embrace that. That's what, honor your parents, especially a Sarah nation. We're going beyond now the insular family and the ins and outs of that, of your personal relationship with your parents, to your parents. Go back to the forefathers. Do you want to, like, given the choice, like, take a minute to think about it, given the choice, do you want to embrace this belonging, the covenant, the story, the mission, or are you going out on your own? And that's really the choice involved in honoring parents. That's a powerful moment. That's a powerful moment. I think it leads into Tisha B'Av, actually. It's like, whoa, like, oh, I went out on my own. It was very lonely. I regret that. I want to go home. I want to go home, make up, be all
I
right.
just want to add to
Yeah.
this angle. I remember watching Fiddler on the Roof. We're not about tradition. Tradition, yeah, we do believe in tradition, but not as a obedience for obedience sake, tradition for tradition's sake. Tradition has to hold the meaning of the covenant. So we're not against intermarriage because of some bigoted view of the non-Jewish world. We're carrying out a covenantal mission for humanity. So it should never be misunderstood to be tradition for tradition's sake, or God forbid, a pejorative view of humanity. And the intensity of the commitment to
Mhm.
the family is to ensure that we have a deep understanding of what makes a family work: love, honor, respect to each other, commitment, loyalty. All that makes a family work is what we need to bring to the whole world. Now, I want to emphasize in that regard just a story also. I remember we teach this Ten Commandments program in the schools in Israel at grade 7 level. And I remember I used to particularly like to come to the event uh, on this commandment. We teach the whole Ten Commandments. We have an introduction, conclusion, but the centerpiece is the fifth commandment, where the parents actually participate in a workshop. And the highlight of that workshop is the exchange of letters between the child and the parents, where the child is asked to write things that he appreciates about his parents, that he's grateful for. The parents write things that they see beauty of why they love their children and what they see as their strengths. And they each write this letter with some music in the background, and they exchange the letters and they're reading them. And at the moment they're reading each other's letters, almost inevitably someone starts crying. I start crying watching this, and they embrace. And it's a very beautiful moment of seeing this link in the chain being strengthened by this understanding of the roles and the gifts that only a parent can give to a child, and the respect that only a child can give to their parent. That gives the acknowledgement: I really appreciate everything you've done for me, mom, dad. And I remember at one of these programs, one of the fathers got up and started challenging this whole notion of honoring your parents. He said,
Mhm.
"I don't buy it. I think it's a very damaging notion. I want my child to respect everyone equally. I think by singling out parents, you're actually damaging that ability to teach respect for all people." And the group was kind of looking at him, and it was a little bit taken aback. But afterwards, I sat with him and I said, "I, of course, agree. You need to teach your children. We all need to teach our children to respect everyone and to feel equally respectful, in the sense of committed to respect every human being because they're a human being. But how do you do that? If you can't teach your children to respect the parents, if the parents don't get that special respect from children after all they've committed to the children, so how do you expect your child to learn respect for all humanity? It has to start with what's closest to them." And he kind of agreed. I mean, we had a bit of a standoff, but it was a moment of realizing this is the training ground for all of our character. honoring parents allows us to learn honoring all human beings. As the Mishnah states, Ezehu mechuban, who is truly worthy of honor? Hamechabed et habriot, someone who actually honors others becomes worthy of respect of others, right? I learned this from my grandfather, actually. It's another story, but my grandfather was a person who had great respect for other people. Now I'm talking about my father's father. He ran a very big business and a meat packing plant, and I went to work for him in the summer. And no one knew that I was the grandfather's, the president's grandson. And I was working in the lowest level of, I won't go into details, but it was a meat packing plant, and I was doing, very basic work there, packing. So anyhow, I remember hearing the workers talk about my grandfather. He used to come into the plant and ask people, how are you? He'd remember their names, he'd remember their family situation. He was very, very respectful of every person he interacted with. And the respect they gave back to him was very moving to me, because I saw he had that ability to respect every person. And that created a tremendous amount of even awe of him. He was in awe of all these workers because he really did make them feel important, both for their work and their family situation. He had that ability to convey a deep respect for every human being he interacted with. And I learned that from him, and I'm grateful to this day that I witnessed that not only in the business environment, but in terms of his family. And we knew that we had this tremendous respect for him and my father, both my parents, because of their commitment to us. And in that sense, what you said before about when you raise children, you raise them to be independent from you. That shows your commitment to it's really respecting them. I'm respecting you as a product of me, not respecting you as a product to carry out my ideas. You build respect by showing you respect their independence from you. We all want our children to be independently choosing to follow in our way. But it's a risk when you build independence in your children. They may not choose your way, but that's how God created man. And that's how we as parents emulate God, by creating an environment where our children have to choose. They know their power of choice. And that almost, maybe paradoxically, allows the covenant to be chosen in every generation. It's a risk. Many people don't choose to carry on the Jewish covenant, but we're not following the covenant blindly. We're following it because of its value, because of its importance, because of our own ability to connect to its truth and its mission and the significance of that for us and for the world. And that comes with a risk, because people make choices. And sometimes it's through knowledge, mostly through ignorance. People are disappearing from the covenant today.
Wow. Rav Shalom, we don't have that much time left, so I want to kind of zoom out a little and start to just speak about how do you see this, let's say the wish of the Sarep movement is that Jews in Israel, Jews worldwide, start to realize and start to live with these foundational principles. Like the Ten Commandments become the core values of what they are called in the Torah, the Divrei Habrit. These are the words of the covenant. There's 630 mitzvot, and we have to understand how they fit into it. But more than anything else, that this is the core. This is the core. Let's get this right. How do you see that happening in Israel? What would be the effect of that? Speak to me about this vision.
Okay, so I think at this point it's worthwhile again coming back to the question of Israel's place in this. Why this particular commandment is stressing the land as the vehicle. Why is this central to this commandment in the land that I am giving you? So the answer to that is quite obvious if you step back. You have as it's repeated to Avram Avinu, I'm giving you this covenant. I'm making a covenant with you and your children after you. And this is Eretz Migurecha. This is the second this conversation when Avram's given the commandment to make a Brit Milah, he's told, this is the land that you will be able to fulfill this covenant in. Because the covenant is not with individuals alone. Every individual is a member of this covenant, B'nai Brit. But the covenant is with the people of Israel. To be a Mamlechet Kohani V'Goy Kadosh, to lead humanity, to provide spiritual leadership for humanity by creating a society in Israel that actually reflects God's presence and that contains these 10 commandments, as we've been describing through this podcast, the fulfillment of these values in the land. Why does it have to be in the land? You could have individuals doing it everywhere, and you should, of course, but nations affect nations. Individuals can affect other families, other communities, they can build. In order to change the world, you need to have a demonstration of what this looks like, that a society fulfills these values in all of its dimensions. It's not about personal religion. Judaism is not about a personal religious commitment alone. It's about a people fulfilling a national mandate, a national moral and ethical vision for themselves, and through that to demonstrate what humanity can be. So we talked about this, commitment to truth, commitment to media today. If we need to be able to stand up and know the truth and work for that and stand up and defend Israel. So for Jews outside of Israel, their connection to Israel should be an essential part of the covenant, because that's where it's being fulfilled. That ideally, and I appeal to everyone right now, it's right before Tisha B'Av, the way to fulfill this covenantal destiny is come home. Make the decision to move to Israel. We're waiting for you. We're welcoming you. This is the place it's going to happen. If you're not ready for that, plan on it. So not tomorrow, next week. Right? Make the commitment to be a part of your national destiny in the place that it's happening, and it's going to be fully fulfilled. So I just want to tell my own story in that regard, because it's also very meaningful to me. When I was in yeshiva studying in Jerusalem, and I came back to visit my family every year, and I'm having a conversation with my grandmother, my Babi Blima, and she starts speaking to me in Yiddish. And I said to her, Babi, I don't speak Yiddish. Why are you talking to me in Yiddish? And she said, I see you with a kippah and a beard, and I forgot that you don't speak Yiddish. So she laughs a moment. She looks out over my shoulder back into time. And when she comes back to talk to me, she said, I want to share something with you. When your grandfather and I, your Zadie Willie and I, first came to Israel, it was in 1958. We came by boat from Halifax to Haifa. And we got off, when I saw the land of Israel, and I got off the boat, I went off and I kissed the ground. This tradition of people kissing the ground, the Holy Land, this land that we long for. She's crying. She feels tears coming out of her. She said, I started crying. And I realized that the tears that were coming from my eyes were not my tears alone. They were the tears of my 8 brothers and sisters and their families that were killed in the Holocaust, and the extended, and all the Jews that died in the Holocaust, and all my ancestors that came before me that longed to come back to Israel and prayed to come back to Israel. And I was feeling their tears at this moment coming through me, because here I had this privilege of actually being in the land of Israel. And I felt so overwhelmed by this flood of emotion, of the longing that sustained to the point where I actually came to Israel. Thousands of years of Jews crying and praying and longing to come back, and I came back, and I felt them with me at that moment. Now, it was a very moving story for me, and I said to her, Bubby, that's so moving. How you did it? You never shared this with me before. And she said, how could I have? You grew up, you had your sports, your relationship, your music. You didn't have any relationship to Torah or to Israel. Now you do. You live there. You're studying about this covenant, about the land of Israel. It's significant. Now I can share this with you. Now, it's such a powerful moment for me to realize that I had somehow created the kli, the vessel that could receive this story. And that's the job of a parent. We have to be able to give our children the ability to receive the message. It's not enough to have a message. You have to build the ability in your children and future generations,
Mm.
the ability to receive it. Then you can give it. Then it'll be passed on to the next generation. Now, this to me was the exact coming together of listening to a parent, of kibbutz, honoring my past, honoring my grandmother, my grandparents, and the land of Israel, because they came together at that moment because they're intertwined completely. Now imagine all the Jews, the 7 million Jews that are here now in Israel. Each one carries a story of 120 generations of people passing on generation after generation. We have a covenant, and the covenant is to get back to Israel and fulfill it. And we're going to pray every day that we're going to come, God's going to bring us back. Each one carries that resonance, that continued pushing of those messages, of that longing of fulfillment of the covenant in the land of Israel. It's mind-boggling. We're so privileged today to have the opportunity to actually be here. We don't realize that, how significant that is. Someone said, imagine being in the old city in Jerusalem and your great-grandfather, I don't know how far you have to go back for each person, but my great-grandfather all of a sudden appears in the old city with me. And he's looking around. Where are we? We're in Jerusalem. Who are these people? They're all Jews. What are they doing here? They're all living here. This beautiful place is Israel and the Jewish people, and we're back. How many are? So he would say, where's the Messiah? Where's the Mashiach? Right? Because it's obvious
Take
the
me to meet
Mashiach,
him.
pardon me?
Take me to meet him.
Take me to meet him.
He,
I want to meet him.
he must be
Exactly.
here.
So we often don't take the time to realize what times we're living in. And it's because of this honor your parent commandment that will bring length of days. Length of days means both forward and backward. Length past and to your future. Al ha'adamah, on the land that Hashem is giving you, present tense. He's giving it to you now, and you can lengthen your days, meaning you can have grandchildren here and great grandchildren here, will naturally be a part of the covenant. It's harder to work to keep your kids and your grandchildren in line outside of Israel because it's not the natural environment for the sustaining of our covenant to be a light unto nation. You have to do it as individuals, and thank God for thousands of years Jews made that commitment to do it. But now's the time it can come together in a completely different way. We could celebrate this Geulah, this redeeming time of redemption that we're actually at the, I don't know, early, middle stages of. We're getting closer and closer. So that's where this commandment provides the energy, the place, the vehicle, taking us from the promises to Avram Avinu to be a covenantal destiny in the land to bring this blessing to the world, to us today, and to God willing soon to bring the redemption that will see the fulfillment of this mission.
Amen. Amen. And I'm sitting here and I have to tell you, like, the words that are going through my mind are like, okay, I'm sitting here in Baltimore. Why? Why? What am I doing here actually? And our rabbis were very harsh about it. And but it's what you're saying makes so much sense. Someone that lives outside of Israel is as if they have no God. What do you mean? I speak to God all the time. I try very hard, but yeah, and God's saying you're you're zooming all the time. Come be face to face.
Okay, I just want to clarify also, I don't want to judge anybody.
No, it's not it's a reality. It's a reality we got to live with. We got to deal with. We got but if anything from today, it's just it's an invitation to stop and think and make a real decision. Like your cousin who had that child who was like, why am I doing this? Why am and just being open to that, hearing those voices. Yeah, it's easier here. I'm doing well here. There's a role for me here. I'm not sure but it's who I am. I can't, that should be living with us wherever we are. It's who we are. And this is so important to our commitment to Israel, our interest in Israel, our helping. a lot of Jews maybe just become more focused on how can I help, even if I'm not there, but how can I help that this mission, this destiny gets played out in Eretz Israel. That's a beautiful message on a national scale. Rav Shalom, thank you.
If I can end with this little thought
Yeah,
from
of
Rav Kook,
course. Yeah.
Rav Kook, Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen
He's
Cook.
on the top of, don't look back, but he's on the top of your left shoulder. Yeah.
So his one of the
He's
great
looking over your
insights,
shoulder, Rav Shalom. He's looking over your shoulder.
I feel very blessed. Thank you. I think he's one of his great insights and teachings and life's work was to embrace the secular, so-called secular pioneers of Zionism.
Yeah.
And he went to them. He did a tour of all the kibbutzim and the moshavot, and it was a time of great separate conflict in many ways, as it is today still, that we have this separation or this division in the Jewish people that we struggle with. And one of the things that I always found fascinating about his teachings is that he managed to see beyond what people's conscious awareness of their mission was. So if a Zionist pioneer, secular, saw himself as rejecting traditional Judaism and throwing off the yoke of heaven and being an atheist,
Mm.
he respected that and managed to, at the same time, respect their choices, but see them as a fulfillment of the divine mission of the return of the Jewish people to Israel. So, despite their conscious beliefs, he viewed them as the greatest movement of return in history. They led the return of the Jewish people back to Israel, many of them. They were religious leaders as well. But even the secular leaders who saw themselves distancing themselves from the covenantal mission and destiny and covenant with God and this partnership of history, they said, I'm not a part of that. Rabbi Cook said, I respect your ability to see it that way, but I see it differently. I actually see you as central to the fulfillment of this return of the Jewish people to Israel, the return of the Jewish people to their mission. And I respect you for that and relate to you through that, being a shaliach, being a messenger, a emissary of the Almighty in this huge historical unfolding. I'm saying this partly in relationship to Jews around the world that may not believe in God, may not believe in Torah, may not believe in Israel as the centerpiece of all of this. I ask you to think about it in the context of somehow the non-Jewish world is currently reminding us we are part of this family called the Jewish people, and that family of the Jewish people's home is in Israel, and we call it our homeland, and this is your home. And you may not accept the whole package. You don't see it that way at all, but you should know that God might view it that way, and that Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook viewed every Jew as recognizing this sense of belonging to the home of the Jewish people, being a part of the unfolding of this destiny, whether he saw it that way or not. So try to suspend your own belief in your non-belief in order to be able to see that there's something that we all contribute to this destiny, even if we're divided in our belief systems and our belief in how we view this whole period of history. There's something that we're part of, whether we like it or not.
Well, yeah, I think from a historical point of view, just thinking about where we are, we mentioned the circumcision, so the 8 days old, this kid knows nothing. And we say, you're a member of the covenant, whether you know it or not. In fact, you don't know it, but we are put, as a parent, and it's a mitzvah of the father, I'm putting the sign of the covenant on you. And then, you grow up, and then, like we said before, you're faced with this decision. Am I going to embrace it or not? And when you look at it that way, it's very powerful because, yeah, I'm part of it. No, stop. Why are you part? Are you going to embrace it or not? That's such a strong, strong question. Okay. Thank you, Rav Shalom.
Thank you.
You should have a meaningful fast. We are told, our tradition, I don't know where it is exactly, that the Messiah is born on Tisha B'Av. We really should. We should, all of us, say a prayer that the Messiah should be born. I don't know if the Messiah has to be born at 0. It can be born, right? The Messiah
No,
comes about.
just to consciously realize that, my wife always said to me, the belief that Mashiach will appear at any moment means that he's not being literally born on this Tisha B'Av. It means that he was born on Tisha B'Av, literally or spiritually,
Right.
but it's an emergence of we wait and pray that this Tisha B'Av he'll appear, meaning there'll be a birth of the reality of the leadership that we need to realign with our mission as the Jewish people.
Amen. Amen. Thank you.